Hello everybody, so welcome to the fifth lecture of the subject network theory. So today we will be discussing continue our discussion on Fourier series. So the different beautiful mathematical properties of Fourier series will be explored, and we will discuss some nice examples of Fourier series where we will show you that how even with some finite terms of the Fourier series we can reconstruct good approximate of the original function. And this from an uncountable domain, uncountable support, we are going to some countable support or even some finite support, such that we can use the Fourier series for like numerical manipulation using a digital computer or even by pen and paper. So let us start our journey then. So this is lecture 5. So we will start our discussion from the phasor, that is e to the power I theta. What this is? This is a complex number. So if I draw it, this is some complex number z. So in the amplitude phase form, it looks like 1 into e to the power I theta. So amplitude is 1 and phase is theta. So if you draw it on the complex plane, how does it look like? So this is the complex plane, this is the real axis, this is the imaginary axis, then it will look like a rotating, the phasor will rotate on this unit circle. So this is the unit circle. Unit circle is defined by the following expression, that this is basically all complex numbers such that the modulus of that complex number is 1, unity. So the amplitude is unity. So the phasor can be imagined, this is the origin, the phasor can be imagined to be this vector of having unity amplitude, and it is rotating around this circle. So the angle is basically, the positive angle is starting from the positive x-axis, positive real axis. It is rotating counterclockwise, and that is how you measure the angle. So it can be positive pi, positive 2 pi, positive 3 pi, positive 4 pi, like that. The opposite direction rotation is the negative direction. So this is minus pi, minus 2 pi, like that. And we can clearly see that this angle is modulo 2 pi. So whenever you cross 2 pi, it will basically subtract 2 pi from the angle, and you will always get this theta between 0 and 2 pi, because 0 is equivalent to 2 pi. So 0 is equivalent to 2 pi, the modulo sense. So interesting thing is that for this phasor which is rotating on this unit circle, what will be its real and imaginary component, and how that is changing, the projection is changing with the angle theta. So we can basically write down that, let us write z is equal to x plus iy. So x is the real value, y is the complex value. So how you can compute the x and y? So suppose if this is the complex number z for a particular theta like this, then if you do the projection on the real axis and on the imaginary axis, these lengths will give you the real value and the imaginary value. So from the simple trigonometry, from this where this angle is theta and the amplitude is 1, unity, you know that this angle is, this length is basically cosine theta. And what is this length, which is equal to this length, is sine theta. So those projections are cosine theta and sine theta. This is the famous Euler's identity. And you can see that if you draw the graph of those real and imaginary with respect to theta, so 0 to 2 pi, some value, this is theta, then the cosine will look like this. And in the same graph, if I plot the sine will look like this. So they are similar kind of curves, but with a phase shift. It's like that the sine curve, if you shift 90 degree this side, so these points are, this is the 0 angle. This is basically the 90 degree angle pi by 2. This point is basically pi or 180 degree. This is basically 3 pi by 2 or 270 degree, and 2 pi is basically 360 degree. So if you shift one curve, say sine curve, 90 degree this side, pi by 2 this side, you will get the cosine curve. In the same way, if you shift the cosine curve pi by 2 this side, you will get the sine curve. So that is the phase difference between the sine waveform and the cosine waveform. And combining these two waveforms with this complex number, with this imaginary quantity I, you get the complex exponential. So these curves, these so-called like harmonic curves or the sinusoids, these will be used for understanding Fourier series, for explaining Fourier series. So let us start our journey. So Fourier series, we told that for any signal xt, which signal we will state the so-called Dirichlet conditions today, which are a set of sufficient conditions for existence of Fourier series. So I am writing the Fourier series first, that for any signal xt which is periodic or defined over the unit circle, having finite support or defined over the unit circle, defined over the unit circle. So what we can write? We can write xt as this infinite summation of x hat n e to the power I in 2 pi by t into t, where small t runs from minus infinity to infinity, and n runs from minus infinity to infinity. So this is for all t. Actually you can write in any way, like you can write for this as well, because that thing will repeat forever. This is a periodic signal. Now we see that this, what is 2 pi by t? T is basically the time period of the entire signal. So this is a periodic signal, so capital T is basically called the time period, and 1 by t is called the fundamental frequency. So this is called the f0, or the fundamental frequency of the waveform. And 2 pi by t is basically 2 pi f0, which we can write as omega 0. This is called the fundamental angular frequency. Fundamental angular frequency. Then we can replace 2 pi by t by omega 0, and we can have this form x hat n e to the power I n omega 0 t, for n is equal to minus infinity to infinity. This is the Fourier series expansion, where x hat n is given by the inner product, which is basically the inner product of xt with e to the power I n omega 0 t. This is the basis, which can be written as the integral 1 by t integral 0 to t xt e to the power minus I n0 n omega 0 t dt. So this is the synthesis equation. So this is the this is the analysis equation, this is the synthesis equation. Combining these two, you can from xt you are basically getting the coefficients, and from here, from the coefficients, you are getting the signal back. Now, for which kind of xt, what condition xt should satisfy such that this Fourier series exists, or this infinite sum converges to xt in some particular sense. So what kind of so this question of convergence will come again and again. We'll talk about different types of convergence and what makes sense in a particular problem. So we'll talk about that, but before that, let us state a few sufficient conditions. I am not going to prove them because they are beyond the scope as of now. However, those conditions, those sufficient conditions are not that much important in our course, because we don't come across those pathological functions very often. Nevertheless, let me complete the conditions. So these are called the so-called Dirichlet conditions. These are some sufficient conditions. What do you mean by sufficient conditions? Sufficient conditions means if those conditions are satisfied, then so Dirichlet conditions, it says that if like xt should be integrable, absolutely integrable, in the interval 0 to t. So we should write 0 to t modulus of xt, because xt can be complex function in general, dt, this should be less than infinity. This is the first condition. Second condition is xt should be of finite variation. That means there should be only finite number of maxima and minima. Maxima and minima. So functions of the form like sine 1 by x for x belongs to 0 to t, these kind of functions are not permitted, because you can see that sine 1 by x have infinite number of maximas and minimas near 1. So these kind of functions do not satisfy Dirichlet condition. Thirdly, there should be only finitely many discontinuities. And like no discontinuity should go towards infinity. So all discontinuities should be finite. Should be finite. So these three conditions, the so-called Dirichlet conditions, which are developed by this guy Dirichlet, that if they are satisfied, they are sufficient conditions. So that enforces that the Fourier series will be convergent. Sufficient conditions. They enforces that the Fourier series will be convergent whenever xt is continuous. So at every point of continuity, this is convergent. However, this is not necessary. This condition is not necessary. That means that even if this condition is not satisfied, that does not mean that the Fourier series will not be convergent. So it is possible that you have a convergent Fourier series even without satisfying this condition. So this is tricky, because people have shown different kind of convergence at different times. For example, Andrei Kolmogorov, he showed that even a continuous function can have a discontinuous Fourier series, like non-convergent Fourier series. So that is possible. We will mostly, but in our network theory or even signal systems course, our signals are not pathological, so we will not come across functions like sine 1 by x of this form. So whatever signals we will see, they will be mostly continuous. If not continuous, there can be only finitely many discontinuities. For example, if you take a square wave, so a square wave in one period there is one discontinuity. So suppose this is say minus t by 2 to t by 2. So in this interval there is only one discontinuity which is having some amplitude. So these kind of functions, they are satisfying Dirichlet condition, and we should expect that they should have a Fourier series which is convergent. Now before going to one example, we will take one example definitely, but before that let me talk a little bit about this term convergence. What do you mean by convergence of a Fourier series? And that will basically motivate us more towards the point that why Fourier series is at all necessary. So the notion of convergence. So when we write the Fourier series, suppose I am writing xt is equal to summation x hat n for all n, all integer minus infinity to infinity, e to the power I n omega 0 t, right? Now here t runs from 0 to capital T. So that means this is how many equations? How many equations are there? There are uncountably, infinitely many equations embedded in this form, right? For every t, you will get one equation. So I can write down like x point 1, you have one equation. X hat n e to the power I n omega 0 0.1. For 0.11, you will get another equation. For 0.12, you will get another equation. For 0.001, you will get one equation. And so on and so forth. So between 0 and t, for all real numbers, you will get one equation like this, right? So in this interval 0 to t, for every value of t, you will get one such equation. Now what is, so left hand side will give you one complex number. So this is a two-dimensional number, one real part, one imaginary part. Fantastic. Right hand side gives you a infinite series of complex numbers. So this is complex number, this is complex number, the product is complex number, and you are summing those complex numbers over the entire integers. So the parameter here runs from minus infinity to infinity. But in reality, when you are given x in hat, suppose they are given, and you are asked to solve for x, say at a particular time t, say x.1 or something, will you go for infinite summation? This infinite summation is not possible for any real engineering problem. Infinity is fine in mathematics, but like abstract mathematics. But whenever you come across some real problem, be it simple harmonic motion, be it heat conduction, be it some other kind of problems, you don't really go from minus infinity to infinity. You have to truncate it. So you have to essentially, like what you will compute, you will not compute the entire Fourier series. You will compute some partial sum. So I will write, say, sum n up to n terms of that signal x, and that sum is essentially the Fourier series of the terms, but when n runs from minus capital N to plus capital N. So you are taking only 2 capital N plus 1 terms. Those many terms you are taking and you are summing them. Now the question is, and this is for every t, so it is a function of x and t. Sn x and t. So the question is whether this sum of x and t, it converges to xt as n tends to infinity and capital N tends to infinity, and for all t. This is the question. So this sum needs to go towards xt as you increase n, or the gap between these two, so we can take the difference. So we can take Sn xt minus xt, we can take the difference, which is a complex number in general, and we can take the modulus, and we can study that whether this goes to 0 or this becomes less than some small value, say epsilon, which is a function of n, for all t. So this kind of convergence, which is basically the strongest kind of convergence, so for every t you are testing the convergence. This is called the pointwise convergence. So we know from Dirichlet condition that if there are some discontinuities in the function, at the point of discontinuity you will not have this whatever number of terms you take. However, at every point of continuity you will get this. So you will see that the partial sum is indeed converging to the signal when Dirichlet condition is satisfied. Now this epsilon is a function of n. It can be a function of t as well. So this small number can be a function of t as well. So this is called the pointwise convergence. However, if this epsilon is not a function of t, then we call it uniform convergence. If that epsilon is not a function of t, so it is only when we can write uniform convergence as when Sn xt minus xt, this will be less than some epsilon of only n, but not a function of t for all t belongs to 0 to t, capital T. This is for all, right? So these two types convergences are very strong convergences, especially the uniform convergences, and there are techniques to study uniform convergences using different kind of calculus tricks. However, for our purpose, for our applications, there is another type of convergence which we will take because we have already developed the notion of Hilbert space. So this will be really useful, which is called the norm convergence. So let us build this intuition first. This will be very convenient for our purpose, for our applications. So we do something called the norm convergence. So when you take one signal, say xt, and we are taking this finite support, so t belongs to 0 to t. So we define that in that Hilbert space, the norm is defined as, say norm square is defined as 1 by t integral xt square modulus square, since it is complex, dt, isn't it? So what is this norm? If you think from a voltage perspective, suppose voltage or current perspective, suppose xt is some current or some voltage. So you can visualize like this. Suppose xt is some voltage, some periodic voltage, which every interval 0 to t, it has some pattern. So it has some pattern. So it can be like this. So this is a square wave. So this is the interval capital T from 0 to t, and it repeats over and over again, or it can be some arbitrary signals as well, and that repeats over and over again, and this is your 0 to t. So suppose that is the voltage source, and then that is the voltage source, and then you have some resistance connected in series. So the question is that if this is the voltage source and the resistance is say R, what is the power consumed across this resistance? What is the energy consumed across this resistance in time capital T? So this will be, we know that the energy in time t will be equal to 0 to t. If this is a voltage source, then this is x square divided by r dt. If xt is complex, we will get modulus of xt square. If this is real, simply xt square. However, the modulus does not have, right? So energy per time is basically power. So power is 1 by t. So this is per unit time. So power is 1 by t integral 0 to t xt square by r dt. This is the power of that particular signal if xt is a voltage. If xt is current, then this r will be multiplied with that, right? I square r. So we can define, to like remove the dependency whether this is voltage or current, we can say that if r is equal to 1 ohm, so this is the standardization we can say. So standard, if r is equal to 1 ohm, then power for both current and voltage signal will be equal to 1 by t integral 0 to t xt modulus square dt, which is exactly the norm square. You see? So this is the norm square. So this norm square we can use in that decomposition problem, in the orthogonal basis expansion problem, and we will apply Pythagoras theorem and we will get something really interesting. Let us see. So this Hilbert space of xt, and we are assuming that this is some vector xt whose length is essentially norm of x. So that is the length. The square is norm of x's whole square. Now what we are doing in Fourier series, we are like decomposing, expanding xt as n is equal to minus infinity to infinity x hat n e to the power I n omega 0 t. So clearly this e to the power I n omega 0 t's are the orthonormal basis functions. So they are the basis, they are having unity norm and they are orthogonal to each other for different values of n. These are the coefficients, or the coefficients can be found. Remember the 3-dimensional or 2-dimensional situation. In 2 dimension, when you have a vector, this vector say v can be written as v1, and if the unit vector this side is e1, this side say v2, and the unit vector this side is e2. So you can write v is equal to v1 e1 plus v2 e2, right? So this is the similar kind of expression where x hat n is the coefficient. These are the unit orthonormal basis functions. Then in 2 dimension we know the Pythagoras theorem. So from the geometry, this is some right angle. So we know that v square, the length of the vector v, will be equal to v1 square plus v2 square, isn't it? That's the Pythagoras theorem. So if you compute the length of the hypotenuse, square of that will be the length of this arm plus the square plus the square of the length of this arm. So we can apply the same Pythagoras theorem, on that infinite expression. Then what will you get? You will get xt square, the modular, basically the norm square, that is the length of the vector, will be equal to sum of square of all these numbers. So that will be equal to x hat n modulus. This is the complex number. So for as x hat n is complex number, you take the modulus of that square for n is equal to minus infinity to infinity. So straight away applying Pythagoras theorem to that Hilbert space, you get one identity which basically relates the power of the signal xt that we have shown. This is the power of the signal with something of the coefficients. Let us observe what is this. So the coefficients are basically a sequence. So let us visually represent the sequence over n. So suppose I am writing n on the real line. So starting from minus infinity to infinity, n are the integers. So they take only the integer values, not every value. They are countable very much. Minus 1, minus 2, minus 3. And at every interval, at every instance of n, so this is the n, x hat n assumes some complex number. So basically you will get two sequences, one for, or in two colors you can write them. So one for the real number, another for the imaginary number, or you can plot amplitude and phase of x hat n. So we can write x hat n in the amplitude phase ways as well. So you can write as Rn summation phi n, Rn angle phi n, in this form as well, where this will be the amplitude, this will be the phase of those complex numbers. Then we can plot two curves, two graphs. So these are the integers 2, 3, 4, etc. minus 1, minus 2, minus 3, minus 4, etc. And we can plot these numbers, say something, some real numbers, right? And this is the plot for Rn and this is the plot for angle, say. Okay, Rn, if I write Rn, then it will not be negative, it will be only positive. And the angle can be between the values of plus pi and minus pi or 0 to 2 pi, whichever way you write. So I can write between minus pi and pi, and for every value you will get some number. So this is the way of representation, right, of the complex number sequence. Now you can visualize this as a discrete signal or discrete function, complex valued discrete functions. Then the square of a particular value is basically energy of that instantiation, energy of that value, right? Square of that, and if you sum that, that is basically telling you the energy contained in the entire discrete signal, complex valued discrete signal. So this particular theorem, which is basically the infinite dimensional Pythagoras theorem, it says that the energy contained in the continuous time signal or the analog signal is essentially equal to the energy, this is the power in 1 unit period. This is the energy contained in the complex valued discrete signal, and this signal here, the argument, the running variable is not time, this is the integer. Actually it is not only integer, there is some inherent fundamental angular frequency there. So this is a function of the frequency, which is a discrete frequency. So this particular theorem, which we just stated, like extending Pythagoras theorem, this is called the Parseval's identity or Parseval's theorem for Fourier series. So this Parseval's theorem for Fourier series, it gives us another way of applying convergence, and we can have the so-called norm convergence. Let me state that now. So the norm convergence, the Fourier partial sum, which we just wrote, x hat n e to the power I n omega 0 t for n is equal to minus n to n. So this is the partial sum, and this is also a signal of time, right? So we say that if the energy content here is close to the energy content of the original signal, or if we write the difference of the two signals, so basically xt minus sn xt, what is that? In terms of the sum, it is basically like all other components of the Fourier series except these two n plus 1 components. So it is basically when n is greater than actually modulus n is greater than capital N. This is the difference of the actual signal xt and the partial sum of capital sum of those two capital N plus 1 terms. So this is for that, right? Small n modulus is greater than capital N. That means from minus infinity to minus n minus 1 and then n plus 1 to infinity. Those elements we are considering. So this is your partial sum domain where you are taking the partial sum for n. This is a 0. So these are 2n plus 1 terms, and the remaining terms, the two tails, these are the remaining terms from minus infinity to minus n plus 1 and then n plus 1 to infinity. So if you sum those Fourier coefficients along with the basis function, then you will get the error signal. This we can write as En xt, the error. So we say that this Fourier series, the partial Fourier series converges to xt in norm if the norm of En xt the square or whatever, this goes to 0 as n tends to infinity. So it basically says that for sufficiently large n, the energy in this frequency line, this n omega 0 line or n line, the energy contains mostly within this finite interval, and the tail energies are arbitrarily small. As we increase capital N, the tail energies are arbitrarily small. So we can apply Parseval's theorem here. So what is this? This energy is essentially equal to summation x hat n square for modulus n greater than equal to capital N. This should go to 0 as n tends to infinity. So this is something which is comparatively easy to check, right? Because you can compute x hat n easily in an analytic form. So x hat n, you know, this is this integral 1 by t integral 0 to t xt to the power minus I n omega 0 t dt. This you can compute, and after that you check whether the tail energy, the total tail energy, that goes to 0 as n tends to infinity. Then that will enforce the norm convergence. We'll talk more about that later, but before that let me talk about a little bit about the real Fourier series as well, because our system will consider real signals as voltage or current many a times. So let me just state that, then I will talk about one example on which I will give you the second tutorial problem. And we will discuss this norm convergence etc. as well, or pointwise convergence etc. as well in the tutorial problem. So what is a real Fourier series? In many textbooks or in many lectures also, they start from real Fourier series, but I did not. I wanted to develop the geometric intuition first, then we will go to the real Fourier series for the sake of completion. So we get the Fourier series xt is equal to this xt. Earlier we assumed that to be a complex valued signal. Let us enforce now xt to be a real valued signal, a real signal. Then this sum x hat n e to the power I n omega 0 t, n is equal to minus infinity to infinity, and this complex number let us expand. So since this is complex number, we can say that xt is basically real of this term. So real of the entire series, right? The real part of this. So real part of the entire series. What is that? So x hat n we can write in two components. Say some u hat n plus I v hat n or something. So this is the real part of the coefficients and this is the imaginary part of the coefficients. Then we can write that as u hat n plus I v hat n into e to the power I n omega 0 t. Apply Euler's identity. So this is cosine n omega 0 t plus I sine n omega 0 t. Multiply, you will get, I can write down straight away. I am removing this real, so I will take only the real thing and leave the rest. So you will get sum n is equal to minus infinity to infinity u hat n cosine n omega 0 t minus phi hat n sine n omega 0 t. So this is the real Fourier series. So you can say that what are the basis functions now? Basically there are two series. So one series is this one, cosine n omega 0 t. Another is this one, sine n omega 0 t. And you can say that this is also integer and this is also over the integers. You can say that these two series here the basis functions are not the complex exponential, rather the harmonic functions, sines and cosines, the real harmonic functions, sines and cosines, and they are the basis function. You can test that whether they are legitimate basis function or not. How can you test that? So you can test that by this. You can check whether their norm is unity. So cosine square n omega 0 t dt, 0 to t 1 by t, check whether this is 1. Similarly, check the other one, 0 to t 1 by t sine square n omega t 0 t dt, whether this is also 1. You can easily check, this is 2 cosine square is 1 plus cos 2, 2 sine square is 1 minus cos 2, cos 2, integral of cos 2 will cancel out, so 1 will remain. So from there you will get it, right? Now you can also check that whether they are orthogonal to each other. So you can check cos n omega t sin n omega t n omega 0 t dt, whether this is 0 or not in this interval 0 to t. This will become sin 2 n omega 0 t. So that if you integrate, you will get 0. Similarly, you test for other combinations, like you can try it for all n and m combinations. So cos m omega 0 t sin n omega 0 t dt, this you check. Then you check cos m, so cos m omega 0 t cos n omega 0 t, this you check, and you check sin m omega 0 t sin n omega 0 t dt. These integrals you check between 0 to capital T, 0 to capital T, 0 to capital T. You will see that all these are 0. So they are really legitimate orthonormal basis functions, and you can compute this u hat n and v hat n separately using these sines and cosines as basis function as well. So basically projecting this real signal over those sine and cosines separately, that will also work. You can try at your in your free time that whether this representation and the complex representation are equivalent or not. We can get some feel right now when we try our first example on this Fourier series. So example 1. So let us take one periodic signal and let us see that how the Fourier series can be formed and how we can approximate using a truncated Fourier series. So the example xt is a real valued signal which we have encountered earlier, we mentioned. So let us take this. So essentially the signal is like this. Signal is like this, oscillating between +1 and -1, and the time it takes is basically to complete one cycle is capital T. So let us take this point to be time t is equal to 0. So clearly this interval from here to here, so which repeats. So you see this interval repeats. This is, I am saying, to be minus t by 2, this is 0, and this point is say plus t by 2. So we can take this one representative signal of finite support as our signal over the unit circle, and this we will use for our Fourier series expansion. So this is minus t by 2 time, and this is plus t by 2 time, and the signal is having the value plus a and minus a. So the signal is oscillating between these two. And so xt, I am writing this like this, that minus a when t is between minus t by 2 to 0, and plus a when t is between 0 and plus t by 2, and 0 when it is crossing, so at t is equal to 0. So at t is equal to 0, I am assuming the value to be 0. So it is crossing with a infinite slope. Now I want to represent this signal, this particular signal with finite support as a Fourier series. So let us write down the Fourier series. Xt is equal to summation x hat n e to the power I n omega 0 t. What is omega 0? Omega 0 is 2 pi by t, this t. That is the fundamental angular frequency. The frequency. Now this is for n is equal to minus infinity to infinity. What is this x hat n? The coefficient. Coefficient is basically computed by the inner product between xt and e to the power in omega 0 t. So this is the formula for the inner product. Sorry, this is minus t by 2 to t by 2. That is the interval we have assumed, not 0 to t. That's fine. So now put xt here and let us try to solve the integral. So it will be 1 by t, and we have to split the integral into two parts. One is minus t by 2 to 0 when xt is equal to minus a e to the power minus in omega 0 t dt, and the second part is 0 to t by 2 when it is plus a e to the power minus in omega 0 t dt. So we have to solve these two integrals in that limit. So let us do that. So this will be equal to x hat n will be equal to 1 by t sum minus a integral, a is a constant, minus t by 2 to 0 e to the power minus in 0 t dt plus a integral 0 to t by 2 e to the power minus in omega 0 t dt. Okay, so actually a I can take outside. So a by t, this will be minus e to the power minus in omega 0 t divided by minus in omega 0, and this integral, the limits are 0 and minus t by 2, plus you have e to the power minus in omega 0 t divided by minus in omega 0, and the limits are t by 2 and 0. So let us put the limits. So it will be a by t into this minus minus cancels out. So actually I can take in 0 outside as well. So in omega 0, this comes outside, and this will be minus minus cancels out. So this will be plus e to the power minus in omega 0 t between the two limits 0 and minus t by 2, plus here it will be minus, so minus e to the power minus in omega 0 t, the limits are t by 2 and 0. Put the values a by in. What is omega 0 t? We know earlier that omega 0 is equal to 2 pi by t. So omega 0 t is 2 pi. 2 pi, this will be 1 minus e to the power minus in omega 0 t by 2 minus e to the power minus in omega 0 t by 2. Sorry, this will be plus because minus in omega 0 into minus t by 2, and finally this will be plus 1, which is equal to a by I 2 pi n into 2 minus, this is interesting, this will be e to the power in. What is omega 0 t, capital T by 2? That is pi, and this is equal to e to the power minus in pi. See? So finally these two, and what is this? Let us write another line. Minus, this is 2 cosine pi n. So these two cancels out. I'll get a by I pi n. This is 1 minus cos n pi. So if n is even, then x hat n is equal to cos pi n is 1 when n is even. So this is 1 minus 1 is 0. When n is odd, x hat n is, this is minus 1. So this is 2. So 2a by I pi n. So these are my Fourier coefficients. If I get that, I'll actually go to the real Fourier series. It will be even more interesting. So we know the real Fourier series connection as that we can write xt as sum of say u hat n cosine n omega 0 t minus summation vn v hat n sine n omega 0 t, in this way when n are all integers. Then your u hat n is basically the real of xn, x hat n, and vn is basically the imaginary of xn. So in this particular case, what is xn? Xn is 0 when n is even and 2a by I pi n when n is odd. So clearly when n is even, both u hat n and v hat n are 0, because the complex number itself is 0. When n is odd, then this is a pure imaginary number. So the real part is even then 0. So real part is u hat n, that is 0. But v hat n will be equal to 2a by minus 2a by pi n. Why minus? Because 2a by I pi n is equal to minus I 2a by pi n, right? I square is equal to minus 1. So v hat n is minus 2a by pi n. Now put that in this series. You will get xt is equal to u hat n is 0. So the first series cancels out. It does not have anything. Second series is minus summation. What is v hat n? V hat n is minus 2a by pi n. Minus 2a by pi n. Sine n omega 0 t only when n is odd. For even, that is also 0. So this is equal to 2a by pi, that goes out, summation for all n odd, sine n omega 0 t divided by n. So this is my Fourier series. I can expand it like this: 2a by pi, n is equal to say 1, sine omega 0 t by 1, there is another thing. So for n positive and n negative, so we have to, so we can write actually my plus 1 and minus 1 after one another. So this will be sine minus omega 0 t by minus 1. Now this is interesting because sine minus omega 0 t is minus sine omega t, and that minus 1 cancel out. So for every these terms you will get a factor of 2. Let me write a few more terms: 3 omega 0 t by 3 plus sine minus 3 omega 0 t by minus 3 plus dot dot dot. So this will be like from every two terms you will get a 1 2 outside. So you will get 4a by pi into only for the positive odd numbers by 1 plus sine 3 omega 0 t by 3 plus sine 5 omega 0 t by 5, and so on and so forth. So this series. So actually from here only I can straight away write this is equal to 4a by pi summation sine n omega 0 t by n for n greater than 0 and n odd. So this is the real Fourier series of the square wave. Now in your digital computer, if you have some MATLAB or MATLAB equivalent software, of course I recommend you for any free open source software, or if you have a proper legitimate MATLAB license, then MATLAB. What you can try, you can basically take a square wave and you can like simulate these terms and you can add them for some number. So it can be, say, you can take 3 terms, you can take 4 terms, you can take 5 terms, and so on, and you can see that how close the truncated Fourier series and the real signal are becoming. So the corresponding tutorial problem can be as follows, that take the square wave, so which is oscillating between +1 and -1, and this interval is basically -t/2 to t/2, and then you take that Fourier series, that is sine, I can write in this way, 2n plus 1 omega 0 t, right, by 2n plus 1, to say that this is odd. So 2n plus 1 is always odd for all n integer, right? And or we can write 2n minus 1, then it will be even better. 2n minus 1 for all n, I will replace integer by natural numbers. So this is positive odd. That is exactly what is required for our particular series we have developed. So we wanted it for like for the positive odd, right? For the positive odd. So for positive odd, I can replace that by 2n minus 1, and this is 4a by pi, and now I can run for all the natural numbers, n is equal to 1 to infinity. So instead of going up to that, this is your xt definitely, but you study Sn xt, that is 4a by pi summation n is equal to 1 to capital N. So here you are taking just capital N terms, that's fine. Sine 2n minus 1 omega 0 t divided by 2n minus 1. So you can plot S1 xt, you can plot S2 xt, and you increase capital N up to say x5 xt, x10 xt, etc. And you say that how close are these signals, these partial sums are to the original xt waveform. You can compute the energy difference between this signal and the original signal. So either by integrating, or you can take the coefficients, so coefficient of the Fourier series. So what is the energy of the original signal? The original signal energy, compute, and then take the coefficients of the Fourier series and compare the energy which is stored in the tail. So from the original series minus the signal, the length which you are taking for this particular series construction. So this will be interesting to observe in a computer, that how good they are becoming. Observe another thing, whether is this convergence pointwise. And is this convergence uniform? Pointwise means like you can check all continuous points. I am not asking you to check the convergence at the transitions where you have a discontinuity, but at least all the continuous points. Is it pointwise convergence? And is this convergence uniform? That means all points are converging in the same speed. You can check it from the simulation. If you get in the result to be negative, then we will get something interesting, and that I will discuss in the next class.